p.m. Tuesday, December 19th, 2023, and I call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Cindy, would you please call the roll?
Meadows,
Yes.
Mathis.
Present.
Here.
Locke. Kilburg,
Present.
Gonzalez Thomas, Sliger,
Present.
Arlandu.
Here.
Thank you. Next, I would invite Aaron to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any items to add or remove from the agenda?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Well, our first thing is one of our favorite things to do, celebrate a success. So as our celebration this month, we'd like to recognize Chris Lowe. Will you please make your way to the podium, sir? Chris has served as a member of the BPS 101 Board of Education from April 2015 till April 2023. In recognition of his dedication to inclusivity and fostering dialogue about equity within the committee, the Illinois State Board of Education has awarded Chris Lowe the prestigious Thomas Lay Burroughs Award for 2023. This esteemed award recognizes school board members who have made outstanding contributions and have shown commitment to educational equity and community engagement. During his 8-year term as school board member, Chris championed the importance of civic engagement, amplifying community voices. His efforts have left a lasting impact on the BPS 101 district and beyond. On behalf of the BPS 101 Board of Education, congratulations, Chris, on your recognition. Would you please share a few things of your thoughts and what this honor has meant to you, sir?
Probably surprising no one, I have prepared thoughts. The last few weeks have been surreal. For those that know me, I'm not a huge fan of the spotlight, and it is especially disconcerting to hear people say good things about me. I keep waiting to hear the but. However, I'm okay with this one because I don't view this as my award. I didn't do this by myself. This is something we did as a community. I've always prided myself on my willingness to hear and understand the concerns of others. I believe this understanding is foundational to building community. I spent most of my experience as a community and school board member encouraging people to use their voice. I taught them about the chain of command. I encouraged them to learn how to have their voices heard. I tried to bring those with common goals and concerns together so they could support one another. I did everything I could to teach them how the system works and how to enact systemic change. I emphasized their voices were important. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the amazing relationships and conversations I've made and had with community members. Here are just a few examples. If Tim Danowski hadn't approached me about the Watchdog program, I wouldn't have been able to help bring the program to our schools. Had students such as Killian, Isabella, and Martin not approached the board about LGBTQIA plus bigotry and racism, I probably would have remained blissfully unaware of the suffering occurring under the surface of our often idyllic appearing town. Had Scott Naylor not introduced me to Amber Jerza, I would have continued to believe I was alone in this fight within the district. A few years later, she's the North Suburban Teacher of the Year, and I'm here as the State Board Member of the Year. That doesn't happen without that introduction. There are many, many other examples I'm not including that have led to this moment. I am here because of the amazing folks who have risked their own personal comfort to build a movement. While progress may not be where we would like it, we have built the foundations of something that can transform our district and our town. I have learned a lot over the last few years, especially when it comes to equity work. Tonight, I'd like to share some of those things I've learned. My hope is others can use the same methods to continue the important community building work. First, I apologize if this is long-winded, but it is our responsibility to use our privilege and power whenever possible, to protect the oppressed and those without power. That includes when you have a captive audience and you receive an award. When we remain silent, we are complicit. If we don't speak up, we allow it to happen. Use your voice, use your wallet, always try to protect the innocent. Always question those with power. I've learned equity work is difficult work. It will drain you both physically and mentally. It will enrage you and leave you in tears. As a volunteer in our community, I have spent hundreds of hours sitting on sidelines, coaching, and in meetings. I feel a personal connection to many of the families and the children I've seen grow up. Yet as a black man, I have seen kids and adults who I thought I had a mutual respect and admiration for commit blatant acts of racism and bigotry. It feels as though our shared experiences meant nothing to them. These moments can leave you confused, angry, and ready to give up. Pace yourself. Take care of yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient, consistent, and firm, but be kind. Trust me when I say it will take you to unexpected places. I would never have guessed this is where I'd be when I first volunteered at Hooverwood School as a stay-at-home parent. I've learned equity work requires us to work on both society and ourselves. One of the most difficult things for me to accept was the knowledge that I have contributed and continue to contribute to systemic oppression and white supremacy. I'm a black man in America trying to do the right thing, and I am still part of the problem. Every day I make decisions that lead to the oppressions of others. It is not intentional. It happens when we participate in the system. Try to be aware of the consequences of your actions. When you see you're causing harm, try to do better. If you can't, ask yourself why that is. I've learned we must seek out the voices that are not being heard. If you have power, chances are you know the opinions of those who are always in the room where decisions are being made. How are those decisions impacting those who are not there? If you don't know the concerns of those you serve, how can you properly represent them? Our systems are designed to oppress those without power. It is designed to silence those without power. I believe it is our obligation to protect and empower the vulnerable. We do that by going out of our way to listen and hear their stories, their truth, support them on their journey. Make certain those voices are heard. Better yet, get them in the room where the decisions are being made. Representation matters. I've learned we must use relationships we create to build coalitions. When I began this journey, I began because of the pain I was seeing from our children. Based on their emails and their comments at board meetings, I knew they were suffering from many of the same problems I experienced as a child. I decided it was time for me to use my privilege and power to help them. At first, I felt I was fighting alone. I was isolated, frustrated, angry, and things felt hopeless. I felt all I saw was pain, and everyone with power wanted to ignore it. As others began to hear and support me, I was able to share the burden. Others were able to share their stories and experiences. We were able to create and build spaces where we could safely learn, grow, and organize. A lone voice is easily ignored. Together, we can't be silenced. Together, we can tear down the walls of systemic oppression and empower our youth to create a more optimistic future for everyone. A question I am often asked, and was just asked yesterday by our state representative, is how do we know if we're being successful? I've got two answers for that. First is the data-driven response. To know if you're making progress, you need to have clearly defined goals and trackable metrics attached to these goals. We know our district is over-identifying children of color for special education. We have specific data that demonstrates our students of color perform significantly worse on standardized tests. We know 75% of our black students are in the bottom quarter on SAT scores. We should use the data we know and collect the data we need to protect the groups we're justifiably concerned about. Then you have to have a timetable to revisit these goals and a plan to adjust should you not make the progress you anticipated. This typically means those making the changes need both power and a budget. Second, and this is a much easier method, ask the people you're trying to help. If black students are struggling and you change policies to make things better, ask those black students if they have seen and felt the changes. Ask them if their lives have improved. Let them tell you the changes are having a positive impact. Good intentions don't always make policies that are effective. I've learned it is one thing to say the right words and say you're an accomplice or ally. It is different to actually do something. We know oppressed groups suffer simply by existing. What have you risked or sacrificed personally to help the oppressed? How have you cashed in your privilege for the benefit of those without it? If we expect the world to change, we need to demonstrate we're willing to sacrifice and lead the way. We need to change our approach and admit our fallibility. We need to help develop the next generation of leaders from students and staff and provide them with the leadership opportunities. We need to seek out their voices and let them know how it is influencing our decisions. We need to make sure there are leadership positions available for them when they are ready. That may mean stepping down from a position of power so others can lead, so new voices can be heard, new ideas tried. I served 2 terms and intentionally chose not to run for a 3rd term. I believe it was time for someone else to have the opportunity. I made a deliberate effort to work with community members to find folks who could be potential leaders. We provided information sessions on how to run for office, what various elected officials did, and the obligations required to anyone who is interested. We helped them navigate the process for getting on the ballot, running a campaign. We helped introduce them to voters and educated them on important issues in our community. I am proud to say that after serving as the first Black school board member in Batavia's history, our city replaced me with 3 candidates of color. To the best of my knowledge, they are the first to represent their respective groups on the school board and possibly within our community. Thank you for having the courage to run and be strong enough candidates to win the support of our community. I am confident you will continue serving them all well. And lastly, I've learned equity work is not passive work. We must be proactive if we expect there to be changes. Doing nothing supports the status quo, which we know is built on oppression. Everyone has something to offer. It is our responsibility to use our skills and privilege to ensure all of our children have access to what they need to thrive. We must be the example they deserve to see. With that in mind, I want to leave you with 2 quotes from James Baldwin. The first, if one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection most, and listens to their testimony. And second, those who say it can't be done are usually interrupted by others doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate all the work and effort you did. One thing I was going to say that I personally learned because I came on the board while you were on it already is one thing about you that I picked up is it's never about me, it's always about we with you. You always do the right thing. You always try to forge a path forward. Might be hard, but you know, you're doing what's right for you and what's right for others at the same time. So thank you. So, appreciate that. Okay, next public comments. Welcome to the Board of Education. If anyone wishes to address the board this evening, please see our recording secretary to submit a form for addressing the board. Please put your full name and address on the form. In general, the board will not answer questions or engage in dialogue during public comment. This does not mean we do not take your concerns or comments seriously. The board values active community participation in the district endeavors and encourages people to engage with the district using appropriate channels and systems designed with your input in mind. Board members are not involved in the day-to-day operations of the district and cannot engage in district business individually. If you have specific questions or would like to further engage with the district, you may submit your questions using the link on the website, and an appropriate staff member will communicate with you. Our BPS 101 Communication Manager, Holly Deachman, will now explain the procedures for public comment and call up the first speakers that I assume we have.
Thank you, President Meadows. We have 2 today. Speakers will be called up in order of form submission. The first form received is the first person invited to speak. When your name is called, please come to the podium so that you can be heard. All individuals speaking will be limited to 3 minutes. As you can see, there is a timer already displayed up on the screen, and we'll start as soon as you're settled at the podium. At any time during this meeting, written comments may be submitted to our recording secretary, Cindy Rodriguez, at my right. Speakers should conduct themselves with civility and respect towards everyone in this room. Our first speaker is Marianne Niederman.
Hi, I'm Marianne Niederman, and I work at Rotolo Middle School for the support staff. I had no intentions of being here tonight, so I'm not really very prepared to speak. But it was brought to my attention that we're going to vote on outsourcing the placement of some paraprofessionals or something. Really don't know much about it, but I do know that I guess they're going to pay them like 60 plus some $1,000 of taxpayer-funded money to put these people in a position through the end of May, I think. So it's a short-term fix on a problem that's been in this district for years. We've had a problem with getting people to work for our district for years. And it might be because we're paying them to start out $14.24 an hour. Now, keep in mind, this agency that they're gonna vote on, approving, we're gonna pay an agency 60-some thousand dollars. It's my understanding, and I could be wrong, because I literally found out about it today, to employ 2 to 3 employees, okay? So 60-some thousand dollars employee, a couple employees. Keep in mind, if you go directly to district, you're gonna make $14.24 an hour. So it doesn't lead much, to the imagination as to why we can't find people to work here, right? I've worked for the district over 16 years, and I don't even make $16 an hour. But we're going to allow a person to come in here and work for an agency, step in to a paraprofessional position, and make probably more than I make. A lot of talk about equity just now, and I am a reasonable person, and I am open to any feedback that somebody can come and bring to me to help me to see this as an equitable proposition for the existing employees, support staff at Rotolo Middle School, or I guess the district. I'm a fortunate person. My husband has a job, makes a good living, so I am not one of those people that are doing it because they need it. But there's a lot of people out there that need the money. And $14.24 an hour isn't very equitable. I know a lady that works in the district. She's been working here 22 years. She makes $27,000 a year, but we're going to give an agency $60,000 to put a couple people in place to fix a problem for 5 months. So what are we going to do in August? When August rolls around, it's my understanding, those people, it's a short-term contract. May, it's over with. August comes around, we're going to have the same problem. What are we going to do? You think they're going to negotiate it for $60-some thousand? I wouldn't if I were them. They know we're in a not very good position, right? So we're going to allow these people to come in and pay people that have zero loyalty to our district. We have a lady that's been there 22 years, and she makes $27,000 an hour. So there's a lot of, the morale is just a little bit in the tank right now. People try to stay upbeat. There's a lot of good relationships with the students there. I question the relationships with these people that are going to have a 5-month contract with our district are going to have with those people, with the students. And aren't we here for the students, really? Aren't we here for the interests of the students? I find it hard to believe that this is going to end in 5 months and that they're going to be able to develop those relationships.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tracy Gaines.
My name's Tracy Gaines. I used to work at Early Childhood Center as a paraprofessional. I recently resigned just to tag along with you due to the pay. It isn't enough to make a living. However, that is not my main issue here today. My main issue here today is safety concerns at JB Nelson and also behavioral concerns. It also tags along with the prior comments. We do not have the resources at JB Nelson to manage the behavioral and safety concerns at this school. Every day, there's 5+ needs at that school for subs. I should also say I'm also on the list to be a sub. I help out at JB or wherever. And there's just not enough hands. There's so many behaviors across the district, the entire United States with kids. I'm sure COVID had a lot to do with it, everything else, home life, whatever. We don't always know. But there's just not enough hands. We can't get the people, and if that's first I've heard of what you were saying, it's a lot of concerns there. We've recently had JB Nelson lots of safety concerns with particular students. Every day there's safety concerns. Things aren't being handled, I don't think, properly on the safety, behavioral, and possibly even the bullying front. And I don't know really what else to add for that. I wasn't really prepared to really be here until 30 minutes ago. But yes, that's all I really have, I think. I just want to make it known. I need it looked into because I'm at that point where I'm either going to pull my kids out or I'm going to move. I moved here for this district, and I'm fed up. So that's it. Yes, I made time.
Thank you very much. Next is our BPS partners, Todd with the E BEA.
Good evening, everyone. Before I start, I was just on the way in here, I had like a memory flashback. So last December was the first time we were formally introduced to Tom. And he was here with his wife and his daughters, and they were all sitting right here. And it kind of shocks me, that's been like a whole year ago already. But the one thing I remember is I made a connection to Home Alone and you being our John Candy coming in here and like saving the day. And so it was just funny that I had that recollection. So again, even though you've only been here, I know you count the months and reflect on how many months you've been in your position. We've known you for more than a year now, so that's really kind of amazing how time has flown. So I just wanted to share that. And the rest of my talk for tonight is about Chris Lowe. So first off, I just wanted to say congratulations to Chris in being recognized by not only the State Board of Education for his contributions to the BPS school system while serving as a member of the Board of Education, but more importantly, for being recognized by your colleagues and the district here tonight. Your student-focused lens, rooted in your own experiences with equity and inclusion, brought a perspective onto the board that was at times itself underrepresented or misunderstood by those without similar experiences. You sought to not only educate those around you, but to motivate by your words and your actions. Thank you for fearlessly speaking your truth, standing up when it seemed you might be the only one standing, and keeping the lens focused on whose voices weren't being heard and how to support our staff to ensure their needs were met so our students can continue to grow. From the BEA, Chris, you have our respect, our gratitude, and most importantly, our thanks for what you accomplished while you were on the board and for what you will continue to do as a community leader in Batavia. Thank you very much. And then, that's all I have for my comments tonight, so I'm going to wrap it up and just say I'd like to wish you all a very happy holiday season filled with peace, joy, and time spent with those that you love. Make the most of every opportunity that comes your way, and have an amazing winter break, and I will see you all in 2024. Thanks.
Thanks, Todd. You doing okay over there, Chris? You doing okay?
I could use a beverage.
All right, next is Laura from Vespa. Hi, Laura.
Okay, so it is an honor to introduce to you Mary LeBeau. She is a dedicated special education paraprofessional who has been an invaluable part of BPS 101 community for the past 20 years. Her journey is one marked by passion, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to help students overcome challenges. Mary's career began at Early Childhood Center, where she spent an impressive 15 years in the instructional classroom. Her profound dedication to the program and the students there was undeniable. However, 5 years ago, her journey took a new direction as she transitioned to Hooverwood Elementary School. She embraced the role in the K-2 Developing Opportunities, also known as DO, classroom for 2 years, followed by another 2 years in the 3 to 5 grade classroom. This current year, Mary has returned to the K-2 DO classroom. Developing Opportunities Program is a therapeutic instructional program designed for students in kindergarten through 5th grade who experience social emotional challenges that affect their school achievement, classroom behavior, social skills, and relationships with others. The program is divided into 2 classrooms catering to the different age groups. In her personal life, Mary is a mother of 3 grown children, each of whom graduated from BPS 101. Her children have gone on to pursue diverse and meaningful paths. One is a social worker in Alabama. Another is a 3rd grade teacher at Louise White. Hi, Erin. And also her son serves as a paramedic firefighter with the West Chicago Fire Department. Mary's personal life is equally fulfilling. She's been married to husband Greg for the past 4.5 years. They reside in Geneva. They share their lives with her 3 stepchildren living in Florida and Tennessee, and 2 beloved grandchildren whom they love to spend time with and to spoil. Together, they find joy in attending sporting events, country concerts, and exploring new places. One thing that Mary wishes more people understood is the vital importance of their roles in the programs that they support. Over the years, Mary has witnessed the profound impact she's had on the lives of students. Parents of the past students often reach out to her, sharing stories of the positive influence she's had on their children. It is a testament to the dedication and unwavering support that she provides. One of the most cherished memories throughout Mary's career has been witnessing students who graduated from self-contained DO program thriving in the general education classroom. This transition represents the ultimate success of the program and the students it serves. However, there is one aspect that Mary feels should change: the compensation for paraprofessionals. After dedicating 2 decades of her life to BPS 101, Mary is currently making $20.61 for 20 years of service. She believes that there should be recognition and compensation for the years of service within the district, particularly given the intensity and physical demands of her role. Dealing with challenging behaviors, including scratching, spitting, kicking, hitting, punching, biting, are just a few that can be part of a daily routine for the paraprofessional. Yet Mary and her colleagues persevere because they believe in the program and are committed to helping students succeed. In closing, Mary is more than a special education paraprofessional. She is an advocate, a mentor, and an inspiration. Her unwavering commitment to students and her desire to see them thrive is evident in her dedication to her work. Her story is one of compassion, resilience, and the pursuit of excellence in education. Thank you for your outstanding service, Mary.
Thank you, Laura. According to our board policy, we designate a portion of the agenda as consent agenda for those items that are usually repetitive and do not require extensive discussion before board action.
Do committee reports.
Oh, yeah, sorry, thank you. My vice president reminded me we need to do committee reports. I jumped right over it, I'm sorry. Anybody have committee reports for today? Danielle, did you have one?
Yeah,
Okay,
let me find,
give everybody a chance to exit.
where'd everyone go?
Chris doesn't
Don't
wanna
take it
sit-
personally, Danielle.
Chris doesn't want to sit through this?
Yeah, right, he's like, did it long enough.
What the heck?
For old time's sake?
Right?
Okay.
Sorry. go ahead.
No, it's okay. Plaque met on November 16th. I was not in attendance, but from the notes, it seems that they've begun to strategize and produce their preliminary professional development planning doc with listing goals. They'll continue with discussion and revision at the next meeting. Discussion at the next meeting will also include BPSU and its offerings. That next meeting is scheduled for January 25th. Equity met on December 7th. The community, it definitely is having really productive conversations. It's really exciting to hear them come together. The last meeting kind of went over their priorities and focus of the group, discussed what's going well, what's not going well within the district. And there was honest and encouraging discussion behind that, which was really nice to hear. You know, you have different points of views and everyone allows a space and kind of feedback. There was a bit of time taken to find a way to bring the student voice to the group. A lot of that was logistics and what will feel comfortable for the kids. We talk about equity within the kids, whether they can come to something in person, stream in, what will they feel comfortable and safe with. So there's a lot of that to consider. So I think the next meeting will continue that conversation. And that will enable them to really decide what to focus on. They want to hear student voices, since everything is for the kids, and decide what the main focuses are, because, I mean, it's a long list of, obviously, different things, but they'll continue that conversation. The next meeting is on February 1st.
I don't have as complete a report as that. The insurance committee met, and I'll just say we shared some good cheer, and we reflected upon the past year and discussed the work ahead. And so the next meeting I'll probably have a little more substance as far as topics of discussion. Did I miss anything, Tony?
That covers it.
Okay. Sounded comprehensive.
That covers
Thank you.
Rob?
I don't have too much to share. I did attend the last curriculum committee meeting and was more listening and observing and learning during that process. So getting the feet wet and getting going on it. So
It's a big topic.
Yeah, I just want to draw attention to on the BPS 101 website, the stipend committee has a nice new page created there. It's really transparent, helps with the knowledge, I'd say. Covers the purpose statement, the scope of their responsibilities, detailing the contract agreement, also their guiding values, and if you want to learn about the application process, there's a nice roadmap explaining everything. So it's really a nice, well-done website, or I should say page on our website. It's underneath the groups section on the BPS website. That's it.
All right, RAC meets later this week? Thursday. So we'll have an update at the next one. Can I go to consent agenda now? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, according to board policy, we designate a portion of the agenda as a consent agenda for those items that usually do not require extensive discussion before board action. These items are generally routine, recurring, and can be grouped together for efficiency. Steve, would you like to share anything before we take action? I don't know why I asked that as a question.
I will happily share
Oh, thank you, sir.
the consent agenda with you. 5.1 is the approval of the meeting minutes from November 14th, 2023. 5.2 is our monthly personnel report. 5.3 is our monthly payroll and bills. 5.4 is our donations. If you click into that, there were 4 different donations, all sizable and appreciated, from Batavia Arts Council, David and Alice Varelli, Office Depot, and Beefy. 5.5 is our board member expenses. 5.6 is the approval to renew our student photography contract. 5.7 is our special education contracts. 5.8 is the approval of the 24-25 academic calendar. 5.9 is the curricular material display, which is right outside. And 5.10 is the approval of the consent agenda.
Anyone have any questions?
I think it might be appropriate if you wouldn't mind expanding on item 5.7.
Yeah, I mean, I can share, Carrie Rue came to cabinet. This was a cabinet-level decision led by Tom Kim, with significant challenges at our high school with all of our specialized programs. We have entertained and tried to do a few things over the course of this year to get better staff there, and we have not had great success. Therefore, she came to us with a concept of utilizing some contracts with some outside agencies. To give some context, over the last few years, we've done these sorts of contracts to hire various specialized positions like psychologists, social workers, speech pathologists, certified school nurses, all those sorts of things. And to meet the needs over at Batavia High School, we have brought this contract to you to get a couple of paraprofessionals. Carrie, when she made this request and we processed this in cabinet, it was determined that the area of greatest need is Batavia High School. In addition, you are also going to be approving a couple of staff members. We're shifting kind of the structure of the program because of a lack of staff, and so we're actually hiring additional co-teachers that will start January 8th in an attempt, again, to better serve our kids. So that's kind of the backstory of those. We certainly understand how some may perceive this, but one central issue is that we have students who come into our buildings every single day, and we need to meet their needs and be properly staffed, and so we have to make these kinds of decisions.
I appreciate that. I know we've tried lots of things to get folks in here, so I appreciate it. I also wanted to call out then on this personnel report, if I'm not right, if I'm wrong, there's 3 paraprofessionals leaving again in this month.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that as far as the need for replacement there? Will we have to take the same route probably?
Not necessarily. I'm not gonna get into each individual's unique circumstances.
Sure, of course.
But yeah, it's anytime we lose any staff members in the midst of a school year, it's obviously a big concern. We have continued to keep the positions posted. Again, when we're making decisions about where to allocate staff, we really look at the greatest areas of need. And so I can't necessarily say what will happen over at 2 of them. I know we're at Rotolo, one at early childhood. Early childhood, for whatever reason, has been in very, very good shape this entire school year with paraprofessionals. I think that that job at the early childhood might be a little bit more appealing to someone as opposed to working with larger students who have maybe more significant needs. So not exactly sure. When we worked with our BESPA Association on an agreement, an MOA to do the special education contracts, and I believe we put in there up to 4 paraprofessionals. We have 2, but like anything, it's not like the contracting agency has a list of 25 paraprofessionals that are available.
Okay.
We were actually very happy to scratch out 2, so we'll have to see where that goes.
I appreciate also the knowledge of the MOA with BESPA.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It was a question I wasn't gonna ask, but crossed my mind. May I ask one other thing? Does anyone else have anything on those 2?
I do have a
Feel free.
So are these vacancies, will they stay posted and be filled? If they're filled, then what happens with the contract?
We have lots of needs. I think we're short 12 to 14 parapros. And so that was a part of our agreement with BESPA, was that absolutely we will continue to keep these posted and we will hire as many people as we can. I think it's a bit far-fetched to think that we replace all of our parapro positions. But certainly if we were able to get a handful of parapros, then we would allocate staff, parapros as needed to the greatest areas of need.
And what's the likelihood, I read in there about the rate for overtime. What is the likelihood of that happening?
Probably very low.
Okay.
Yeah, because essentially their day runs, their regular work day. I can't think of a whole lot of instances where they would be working any overtime beyond like an emergency situation where we had like maybe a shelter in place and had to wait several hours to get clearance and get kids home. When those things happen, that would be extraordinarily unique, but that might be something, but the body of their regular work, by the nature of the position, generally speaking, does not require any overtime.
So just also as a clarification, the $62,000 number is a grand total between these 2, correct?
I have not done the math, but
Yeah, looking at their hourly rates and what we anticipate their work year to be for half of the year.
Okay, and that's a fully loaded rate with whatever they get paid, because you're paying through an agency. That's not their take-home per se.
Correct.
It's their insurance and whatever else the agency covers for them.
That's the agency fee.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Anything else on this topic? Did you have another one?
I just want to throw out there the item 5.8, the academic calendar. I peppered these gentlemen with questions about the calendar, and there was a lot of really good, really thought-out answers to my questions. So I feel like it deserves a little bit more credit than just another line item. You all put a lot of work into it. I saw you worked with the union members on it as well, and got a lot of insight to it. So everything I was like, but what about? They're like, we can't because of this, we can't because of that. So I I don't want to be a part of that process, so don't ask me. So, thank you all for doing that work with the calendar. Yeah,
One of the.
yes, thank you.
One of the things I learned early on, and because the block calendar system, at least from my perspective, kind of like forces you to have to end things at the high school level before, Christmas. And so that's a lot of what I learned anyway, when I was going through this the first couple times. It kind of pushes everything in a certain direction as well, so. But I will say, I do concur that now that both of my boys are in college, they were well prepared for their college life based on that kind of block schedule arrangement, even though they don't ever use a locker and haven't since middle school. So,
It's different.
okay. Any other questions on any other items before I entertain a motion? Thank you very much. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by RJ, second by Aaron. This is an all in favor, or are we doing roll call? Nope. Cindy, please leave us in a roll call vote.
Orlando,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Sliger,
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes. Tom, is there anything to share under reports, or would you please share items under reports?
Yeah, I'll start with, for FOIA, there are no FOIA requests to report to the board for this month. And then moving on to our treasurer's report.
Yep, treasurer's report. Tony. I'm leaping to a conclusion. It's gonna be you.
It's, yeah, yes, it's me, and nothing out of the ordinary to report. The standard investment report and revenues and expenditures and fund balances are that.
Okay. Enrollment projections?
Enrollment projection, I will give you some highlights. Enrollment did decline last year, or excuse me, this year compared to last year, and has continued the trend. Although what's notable is that we actually have more students enrolled this year than we had otherwise expected, given our projection model. So as a matter of fact, there are more kindergartners here than we would have otherwise expected that were born in Kane County. And there's a number of reasons why that might be the case. We don't exactly know for certain, but a lot of it we believe has to do with the housing market. There could be some variance, of course, too, in the number of students that happen to be born and reside in Batavia. But overall, we see that as a good sign. There's about 50 more kindergartners than we would have otherwise expected.
50?
Did you have a
Did
question?
you say 5-0?
5-0, yeah.
And they weren't equally peppered across the district, were they?
They don't ever show up in equal dispersions. That's never the case. They're always clumped, and they're usually clumped in the places that you would least have, where you have the least room. But we do hope that, that's an interesting term. We do hope that it continues. All said, however, enrollment will continue to decline next year. They're just, as I like to say, we're not manufacturing as many as we used to. We graduate classes of over 500 students, and there's only about 350 or so, give or take, that are coming in behind them. So enrollment obviously goes down, and there's not that many students moving into the district in a given year to offset that decline. We do believe that given birth rates as they are right now, that enrollment will stabilize over the next 5 years at about 5,000 students. And the declines that we will see will primarily take place at the high school as those smaller classes enter the high school. So this graph that's shown here, that yellow bar, you see the yellow components of the bar graph getting smaller and smaller. Those are high school enrollments. You can see that roughly speaking, the green and blue bars are about the same. Those are middle school and elementary school enrollments. So, interesting data.
Now, can I add, I believe that what you referenced, that I believe 2 years ago was the largest graduating class that Batavia High School had in its history.
Yeah.
So that was a spike that we had, so that's not the norm to have that many students
And it's all downhill from there for the fourth.
downhill from there.
In terms of new enrollments, if you scroll down just a wee bit, please, Holly. This is just a breakdown of who is coming to us when they enroll. Just a little bit more, get to the bottom of this table, we'll see that roughly 7 or 8% of the students coming to us that are new have IEPs, special needs, 30% low income, and 25% are not necessarily English speakers. And so what's interesting is those numbers, and for non-English speakers, are increasing primarily due to what's happening across the world. Students have different needs, and so we keep an eye on those things so that we can continue to make adjustments so that we meet students' needs as they're coming to us. And if you scroll down just to the very bottom, Holly, there's a blue bar graph right here, or line graph. These are the live births in Kane County over the last 10 years. So you can see how much smaller. When I say we're not manufacturing as many as we used to, we're not. You know, birth rates were over 9,000 in Kane County 10 years ago, and now they're just over 6,300. So things are changing.
This is the first one, though, I can remember that there was actually a discussion or statement about stabilization.
Yeah.
Right? Because the talk over years, even during the referendum and others, people were talking about if it's declining, like it's almost like at some point they thought it was gonna hit zero.
Right.
You know, so knowing that, it's interesting that the language is starting to morph into stabilization is good to know.
What the future holds is anybody's guess, but, you know, we're just looking at the trends.
Right.
So. All right, we can move on to the financial forecast, which is the next item on the agenda. We'll also
Stealing
give
my
a,
thunder.
sorry about that. Unless there's other questions about the enrollment report. It feeds in, of course, into the financial forecast. Obviously, student enrollment is a key component of our, the resources needed and required to educate students. And so that's obviously an important thing. In terms of highlights, I've been saying for several years now, we are in a much better fiscal position than we were even 5 years ago. The district has a higher credit rating with a Standard & Poor, and we have to maintain credit ratings for our bonds, so that individuals or organizations that wish to invest and buy our bonds, they have to understand what our credit worthiness is and our ability to repay. And so that has improved in recent years, and we've also significantly improved our fund balances. Our fund balances were so low that in the spring, we had to issue tax anticipation warrants because we'd run out of cash and we weren't able to make payroll or pay our bills. We had to borrow money to make that before the taxes came in. Looking at based on all the assumptions, what's happening in the economy and looking at our revenue sources, we do believe that budgets will remain balanced until 2028. However, in 2029, we anticipate a deficit. And the key drivers of that are increased costs for staffing. It would also increase costs for purchase services. We rely very heavily in this district on outsourcing transportation, food service, and custodial. And those contracts, with the inflationary pressures that we face elsewhere in the economy, are driving those contracts up as well. And we also faced increased costs and needs for maintaining our facilities, and so we're baking some of those contributions for maintaining those schools into these projections. We're in fact increasing them by 15% annually. So if all continues on this current trend, you know, unless we're very careful, we are likely to see a deficit in 2029. Now, this assumes that we're not hiring any more staff. In fact, it's assuming that we make some reductions in staff proportional to student enrollments. But it also does consider that one of the next big costs that are coming for us is negotiations with BESPA and increase in terms of wages and salaries for individuals in that particular bargaining unit. So if you scroll down just a little bit, Holly, we'll see a graphical representation of that. Please. Thank you. Going down. You can see this is what's projected. You can see that yellow bar that kind of stretches across, that yellow line that stretches across the bars is our fund balance, and while it is increasing, the rate of increase slowly tapers off to the point where it actually starts turning downward in the other direction in 29. The blue bars represent revenues, the green bars represent expenditures, and the blue stands proud over the green until 29. If we scroll down just a little bit more, Holly, we'll see the history over the last 5 years, which includes this year. And you can see that the green bars are much taller than the blue bars are much taller than the green bars. And the pandemic has been good to us in that sense. We avoided a lot of costs during the pandemic. We didn't spend as much money on transportation. During lockdown, a lot of the activities ceased, and so there was a lot of things that didn't happen then. We also had received a lot of money from the feds to support us, and particularly for food service and responding to the pandemic and the like. And now those funds are going away, and those costs are coming back with the full force of inflation. And so you can see that it's changing pretty quickly. Essentially, our expenditures are growing much faster than our revenues, and so we'll need to be careful. And the other thing is that we cannot expect more money from anybody else other than from local taxpayers, unfortunately. We're in Tier 4 of the evidence-based funding formula, which means that we exceed 100% of funding adequacy for our students' needs. And so from the state of Illinois' purview, we don't need additional money here in Batavia. And from the feds, we will get more money each year from the feds, but not anything appreciable. Basically, the bottom line is every new dollar that we have here in Batavia is going to come from local property taxpayers. That's not a situation that's unique in Batavia, but we definitely feel the pressure here in Batavia, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit when we talk about the tax levy. But that said,
You have the slide in here that we were looking at with the breakdown of the 82%. Is that the next?
that's coming up. That comes up in the, we'll talk about that in the tax levy. But yes, 81% of all of our revenue comes from local property taxpayers, yes. I'd happy to answer any questions that you have about the financial forecast.
None at this time, it would appear. Thanks,
Yeah,
Tony.
I'll just say it looks good. I mean, when you start getting out 5 or 6 years, I'm guessing 5 years ago when you did this forecast, you didn't anticipate we'll have a pandemic, and so things are gonna happen that we can't foresee.
Exactly.
So it's good to go out that far, but it's just sort of like,
It's important to see where the contours are.
it's where the trends are
Yeah.
going, but you're good, but you're not that good, so.
Not yet.
He's close, he's close.
I'm just saying, like, obviously, it's concerning to say we might have a deficit in 2029, but things are gonna change between now and then that will impact those.
Yeah, we could have more money, we could have less. It's difficult to tell. If all the assumptions hold, which they certainly will not, there'll be some variance in it.
So I'm just trying to say, like, yes, it's something to keep an eye on, but I wouldn't be overly concerned about that at this point. Is that accurate?
I would say that's accurate, yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next is the several action items we have. First one on the table is adoption of the warm, safe, and dry facilities maintenance plan. Tony, are you kicking us off on this? And
Yeah, this is gonna be
Rochambeau for it?
a tag team, or Mark will
Mark
join us
wants
at
to
the
get up
podium, and
I can tell he's dying to get up there.
he's excited, yeah. We talked about this a lot in October. And we took your feedback and kept talking about it, and we're trying to present information to you in such a fashion that it is, helps you see how all the elements fit together. Mark and his team are in the midst of what's called the 10-year life safety survey, and that is a required survey that we have to do every 10 years. And that survey will be complete, but there are some things that we already know that will have pretty considerable costs that we're aware of right now that we've added here. Those that would make up category 1, which are the mandatory safety items. And Mark can give you some more details on those if you're interested.
The majority, actually, all of those are fire alarm related.
You say that again?
Fire alarm related. So, I mean, devices, boards, stuff that's literally obsolete.
Having difficulty getting replacement parts for them, all that other good stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
The second category of items are what we call warm and dry, and they were identified as priority 1 and essential items that need to be addressed in our master facilities plan when we were doing that. Those items were identified in some cases as early as 2018, 2019 school year, and they have been on our list for some time, and they're getting to the point where we can't ignore them any longer. Is that a fair statement? All The third item is safe entries. That's the one component of the things on this list which we would consider to be optional in terms of how we want to approach them. There are the safe entries, the only two schools remaining that do not have safe entries or vestibules is our HC Storm School and Louise White School. The way that those schools are configured and given their age, the work and the costs associated with putting safe entries on those schools is significant, estimated to be some $12.5+ million, because it requires considerable work inside the building. We looked at other options where we could add on to the school, and those costs were more than twice of what you see here, and it's just out of reach for us with our finances. The challenge with those safe entries, however, is that if we were to decide to move forward with them, you wouldn't, of course, turn around and tear those schools down and rebuild them as was recommended in our master facilities plan. So if we were to move forward with these safe entries, it would not be prudent to do so if you plan to rebuild those schools. The challenge here, however, for the board is that the amount of work, as you can see, with $12.5 million is substantial and requires a significant degree of planning and engineering and architecture. There's lead time involved in doing so. So if we were to start today, the earliest that work would be finished would be not the coming school year, but the school year following. And we cannot delay any longer if we want that work to happen on that timeline. So that's why we're here with this decision now. Now, this, and then there's general maintenance items, which are priority 2 maintenance items. It's a significant amount of money, but other things that just need to be done for the for good upkeep of our schools. And then fifth being functional improvements, and there is no dollar amount there because we just wanted to make sure it was clear that none of the work here in this plan to keep our schools warm, safe, and dry would actually functionally improve the learning environment for students or for staff. This is just, so to speak, keeping the lights on and keeping the school warm and safe. In terms of funding this, you can see a dollar amount there, a total some $48 million. This really should be thought of as a framework. Because when we dig into these projects and we work with our architects and engineers to make them happen, we might need to repackage them in different ways based off of the conditions that exist in the schools or the timing of things. And we expect that these costs will escalate over time. So this is $48 million in today's dollars, and this is a plan that would take 5 years for us to fully implement. So those costs, of course, would escalate with inflation as we would otherwise expect. In terms of being able to fund it, there'd be 2 pots essentially that would fund this work. One would be existing fund balance. It'd be about, roughly speaking, in round numbers, $25 million from our fund balances we just talked about earlier. We've been adding to that pot, but half of the fund balance would go toward this work, and the other would be from our operating budget. We talked earlier about increasing those annual allocations by 15%. So over those 5 years, we would increase our operating budget and allocations in that operating budget for capital projects by 15% each year, and that would get us very near the total of some $52 million worth of work that we're considering. This doesn't preclude us from considering a referendum in the future. So that's certainly a possibility, and that's available to the board. We don't have to make that decision tonight. But the decision we are asking you to make is, we've got a lot of projects that are very expensive, that really just can't wait anymore. And in particular, if we want to put safe entries on these schools at Storm and Louise in the next 2 years, the time we need to start now. Mark, I kind of stole your thunder there, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, pictures.
You've seen a lot of the pictures.
I know.
Well, the other thing the safe entries does include, because to do that work in those buildings, you'll be shifting things around to make that work. We also include the kindergarten in there too, kind of anticipating that for when full-day kindergarten comes on. So that is included in this as well.
For people that are going to watch this online, could you just share an overview, like when you walk into those 2 schools, what that looks like? Because I've been in both, and it is sort of not what you would expect walking into a modern school.
It is not what you'd expect when you walk into a modern school, Mark.
No, so when you walk into those schools, you don't walk directly into the office area. You basically walk into, well, depending on which school you're at, the cafeteria is either on the left or your right, or you can go into, you know, a hallway into other classrooms if you go to the right or your left. If you walk straight a distance, then you have to then enter the office. So really, it's more of an open concept when you walk in. Now, there are things in place. You don't just walk in the door, you have to buzz in, things like that. But when Tony talked about a secure vestibule, at all the other schools, when you have to buzz in and you walk into either a vestibule and then get buzzed into another door, then you enter into the office. That is not the case at Storm or Louise.
We wouldn't call them unsafe,
Right.
but they're not ideal. They require different procedures, and it's just not how things work in today's times, or how they should work. So it's something that we do need to address.
Any comments or questions? This is a big one.
I have a lot of comments and a lot of questions. But I'm willing to let other people go first if they want.
I think that, let me talk a little bit about timeline. We talked about.
Oh, yeah, go for it. Good idea.
We did Gustafson and JB Nelson. Okay. That timeline was very, very tight. That project's about a third of the size, square footage, as these projects would be. If we were to say, we're gonna do this plan on January 9th, I would be contacting our architects and engineers, and the planning would begin. That's how quick, and it will take, basically, that timeline is to plan, and then we would want to get this out to bid in October timeframe and bring it to you in November, probably the latest, to be comfortable with lead time items and things like that. Because we're not building a new building, we're going into a building that's about 46 years old, so you don't know exactly what you're getting into. So you want to have some time and some contingencies built in place for those unforeseen conditions. So that's why the timeline's important, because basically, 10 months from right now is we would be going out to bid for the summer of '25.
I've got just one question to lead.
Ask as many questions as you want.
I understand the timing on it as far as if we want it done by a certain date. What's driving the statement that you made, Tony, that we can't wait any longer?
That's the assumption. Well, there's two parts of that we can't wait any longer. We can wait on the safe entries. That's just a function of whether or not we're comfortable with that. We heard from the community in the master planning process, which we started in 2017, that this was an important and very highly urgent item. And we've been building a plan, trying to float a referendum. It didn't come to fruition, and now we're at a crossroads. We have to make a decision as to what we're going to do there. Items 1, 2, and 4, those can't wait anymore. We need to start working on taking care of our school facilities so that they remain warm, safe, and dry. And Mark can give you more details, but we face daily issues with our HVAC systems and plumbing systems. We talked in October, we showed you pictures of the domestic piping at JB Nelson. It's galvanized pipe, and it's at far beyond the end of its life, and we're just one leak away from catastrophe when it comes to flooding in that building. We literally have to bust open concrete walls whenever something starts to leak, and it's not a good situation to be in. We just can't bury our head in the sand anymore and pretend like these things are going away. It's time to take care of them.
And that part, I recognize. The 1, 2, and 4. I'm still not understanding the crossroads that we're at. Is it we're tired of waiting and we just want to do something?
No, this is us simply saying, if the expectation is that to put safe vestibules on those two schools in particular, and it's to do it in a timely fashion. If we wanted to do it, not for next school year, but the one following, we have to make a decision very soon.
Okay, I get you.
And if we don't make a
Now I
decision,
understand what you're saying.
it's gonna
Just-
be another school year beyond.
Okay, I get, thank you. It was hard for me to grasp for some reason, so. Go ahead with your questions, Aaron. I've got more, but I'll see if you cover them.
Well, you took my first one. So when I was reviewing this, I came up with 4 questions with sub-questions. But the first, why is it necessary to do this at this time, which we've just answered? And if we're looking at what we're proposing to doing, fire alarms, warm and dry, so when our kids are at school, they're comfortable. Safe entries. I mean, I don't think anyone could argue that we'd be negligent if we weren't addressing those primary needs in our buildings. These are not extravagances by anyone's definition. So, and we went through the referendum process twice, because if we would have got different results, these would have been addressed. So we gave the community a chance to weigh in a larger context on those votes, and they spoke, and I respect the community's decision, but now these remain, and we have to address them. So that's why I feel it's urgent to do it now. And because of what Mark said, it's not like you snap your fingers and they start construction. It's a very long process to do it right. So that was my first question. My second question is, and Tony answered this, is how do we fund it, and are we living within our means? Because $48 million is a lot of money. That's, for the most part, the community's dollars that we're spending. We take that very seriously. We don't spend $1 without giving it careful consideration. And so Tony answered it by saying that it would basically be a split of fund balance and operating budget. Now, I would like to ask, we are retiring bonds. We're paying 9.1?
This year we'll pay 8.9. But when they're paid off.
Every time I say it's 9.1, it'll be
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
8.99.
yeah. We'll talk about
That's
that
the
a little bit.
accountant. But anyways, I'm saying, we are gonna have fund, that debt service will no longer be part. So will that free up?
No.
No, okay, sorry.
No.
That was important.
Unfortunately, when you issue bonds in the way
That
that we
can't be
did,
used for other-
that
okay.
taxing authority goes away once the bonds are paid.
All right, that answers that question. But we are living within our means to do this. This won't stress us to the point where if something else happened within a reasonable scale, we would be incapable of responding, correct? Okay. I wanted to ask this question. What are the consequences if we don't move forward on this?
The very first consequence is that we could not reasonably begin work on those safe vestibules for Storm and Louise for the 25 school year. It would be 26 at the earliest that we could do that work.
I mean, and by law, aren't we required to do the fire alarms, or is that,
Yeah, we will be, yeah.
we don't have a choice on that?
You don't, no, that's happening no matter what.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, it's not like, that's about the most basic thing, you have to function, fire alarms.
You have 2 choices with fire alarms. You either wait till it breaks, and then you're in trouble and you can't have a building, or you get ahead of it as minutely aware, as close as you can get to it, and that's where we're at, what I'm hearing, right?
And then my fourth question is, if we didn't pass this, what would be alternative solutions? And would that be another referendum, or just hoping nothing breaks?
Alternative solutions here, other than item 3, is crossing your fingers and praying.
Because we've been kind of punting on these, waiting to see the resolution of these referendums since 1819, you said, right? So it's not like this just came out of nowhere, like we've known it, but we said, well, we're gonna put this together and see what the community says. Those are my questions. I have comments, but if other people have questions.
How'd you do it? How'd you do, RJ or Rob?
You didn't ask any of the questions I had.
Okay. Rob, you
I
know.
just
Sorry.
have a comment on this. First, I commend Tony for this plan and having a plan to execute these items. And I know although he said it in a couple sentences, I know a lot of work went into developing how we would pay for this. So I think it's right now, we gotta do this. He's got a plan to get us there, to pay for this, and I don't see any reason to wait on any of these items.
To follow on with that, I appreciate the accolades, thank you. But Mark deserves them more than I do. He's the one who combs through all these fine details. I just made it look pretty here, but this has been Mark's.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't really look all that pretty, does it?
You like those numbers.
Yeah.
That's why, not those numbers, but just you enjoy numbers. That's why it looks pretty to you.
But Mark and his team did all the real work here, so.
And get you a birthday card with numbers all over it.
I would appreciate that.
Might be on the same page.
You have more questions?
I have comments. Do you have comments?
I don't have questions. Just a comment, regarding number 5, the functional improvements. I know that's a concern for a lot of our community. But, we do have amazing staff. And as much as it hurts to say that we can't do anything for number 5, and I don't want to put everything on our staff, but I feel personally confident that we have enough within their abilities, to support the curriculum, and the majority of our staff meets or exceeds, in their areas. And so I'm confident our kids will receive wonderful education even without their being anything under number 5. It hurts still, though. It's really concerning, but I kind of fall back on that. So that's just a comment. So it's a bummer, but.
Yeah, I don't know how many questions I have, but I do have some comments as well, so thank you. So I visited JB Nelson and I saw the work that was done there. Before I make any comments on that, I just want to make sure that I'm correct. According to the chart, to the plan, 1.1 million was what was spent on the work that was done at JB Nelson. Correct?
For the new vestibules? That's incorrect, isn't it?
Yeah. The total for the new vestibules at Storm and Louise, I total right about 4.5 million.
No, AGS.
At JB Nelson was 2 million.
AGS.
We packaged them together, so it's tough to pull apart.
On the sheet, it says 1.1.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's
The
this.
capital projects master list.
Yeah, that's this year. So it just shows this fiscal year. It doesn't show last fiscal year. So there was another amount it was 800,000 for last year. So then when you combine those, basically it was 2 million, give or take. It's about 4 million total between the two schools.
Okay.
Across the fiscal years, that's why it's
Correct.
split up funny
Yes.
on the
Right.
chart. Okay.
So I've got a lot of thoughts on this, and the thing that I would love to really see, and the thing that I think is missing from this picture, is hearing from the public on other proposals. And what led me to this was at JB Nelson, when we first had the referendum, we had $5 million slated for that school. And we had 6 areas of concern. Out of those 6 areas of concern, as far as I can tell, we addressed 1, control of main entrance. We had space utilization and functional adequacy, classroom for science and hands-on learning, suitable spaces to serve students with special needs, age playground equipment, age mechanical systems and lighting. Was control of main entrance the only thing that was addressed? So my thought process here is I would love to have the public see what our opportunity lost is. I heard you for years say, let's not throw good money after bad. And as much as I love the idea of securing the schools right away, if we're gonna put aside, let's say 20 million, if we're gonna put 10 million per school with items 1, 2, and 3 for HCS, and at one point we're asking for 35 million per school, If that is, funding is available, would it not make sense to ask to see if a referendum for 25 million for one school would pass? Am I making sense here, or does that not track?
So I want to see how I understand what you're saying. You're saying,
Sure.
what if we floated a referendum to pay 25 million per school?
For those two schools, or, yeah, so 50 million in total, if that's where we decide to go, or one school at a time per referendum. I remember very clearly that the representative for the Vote No campaign said, if we had a smaller itemized referendum, they would support it, detailing what we're looking to do. We've now got those details out. This is much more detailed information than we had when we were first doing the referendum. The 6 light items and the opportunity that we lost at JB Nelson, I think is very important to know that those 5 things are not anywhere near getting addressed in this plan. They're not even in scope. So I'm just wondering if the public saw what is wanting to be done at each school, if we had the money, versus what we are gonna settle for. Because that's what we're doing, we're settling here. If they saw that, would they then vote for taking money out of their own pockets to fund the opportunity for these students? I'm just wondering, that's where my mind's at with this, so.
Do you, just as a part of a dialogue, so
Yeah.
do you see that that you couldn't do this while still highlighting those inadequacies or the things that didn't happen, so that if there is a question later about why these things aren't occurring, that presents a discussion point for a potential referendum?
I think the logical way to do that would be to delay the timing. If we're at a point where we need to have HC Storm and we need to start making those calls for those 2 schools in January, that we move something from 2027 into 2025. I'm not sure exactly what it would be, but some of the things that are later that are smaller items. I mean, the HVAC that needs to be done, unless I'm wrong, is like $300,000. The fire alarms, $332,000. It's not anywhere near the almost 10 million per school. I'll add a little bit more. I'm sorry to I don't mean to be on a soapbox here. The locked entrance, the vestibule with the sight line at JBN was great. The new office was great. The storage looked amazing. They had more storage, but then I looked over the side and they still had an old filing cabinet there. I'm like, why is it there? They said, well, because this storage unit, filing cabinet, was actually up against a pole like this. So it was false. It was a false front. Because of aesthetically, that's what they said, there was an aesthetic decision to have it a fake front instead of just pull the drawer out to give more storage space. I'm not sure where that came from, but there's just a lot of missteps there. There's doors that were taken off in the hallway for some reason. There were old fire doors that would close if there was a fire. You would push a button, the doors would close if the fire alarm went off. Those are gone. So the front area where the security was done, it's so secure. You could push a button, the doors lock in the front. If you're in the back of the school, if you're in the cafeteria, you don't have those measures. You don't have that security like you would have had. The teachers are currently using the closet, the janitor's closet, for their lounge because of the amount of sections of kindergartners and first graders they had. They voted together, they talked together about not wanting to have a mobile music, I believe it was. So they gave their lounge up so that the students had a music classroom. I feel like we could do better than what we're doing. And if we go with this plan, that we're just gonna see more and more examples of this at other schools. I mean, we already know that it's like this at other schools, and it's not gonna go away. And a learning environment that is a teacher's lounge versus teachers now working out of a closet where they have a microwave and a small little fridge. I mean, I would love to, as much as I hate it, because I've been part of this for years, I would love to just take a break, think about what we could actually do with the public, and ask them what their opinion is. That's where I'm at.
Okay, now I have my opinion I'll share. It's a different opinion, and I respect RJ's thoughts. First of all, if we vote yes for this, this doesn't preclude us from future referendums. I think the only thing it limits us to is tearing down H.C. Storm and Louise White, because we wouldn't want to invest all this money. But based off the conversations I've had for the last 2 years, even though I believe that is the prudent thing to do, and I wish, you know, I advocated, I mean, personally, I advocated for that was the financially responsible thing to do. That is a concept that is just, mentally, people might understand it, but in their heart and their guts, they just can't get behind it. What I would keep hearing is, my house is 50 years old, and I don't tear it down to build a new one, I remodel. So I think the community spoke in 2 referendums. We had one that was basically a coin flip. The second one, that failed by a larger margin. So I feel that we've been waiting on these things for 4 or 5 years. We're talking about fire alarms, keeping our students warm and comfortable. And someone made a comment to me that maybe the only place that some of our kids feel warm and dry is at school, and we're not even really fulfilling that right now to the best of our ability. And then safe entry. So my kids go to J.B. Nelson, RJ, and I thought about that a lot. And as we know, a referendum is a very slow, methodical process that has no guarantee. And unfortunately, in the world we live in right now, violence is a part of our daily lives. And so, while I can't say that these entries would make it immune to any tragedy that could happen, I would have a very hard time sleeping if we've gone through this process. Because when did 2018 is when we started this process for the referendum, right?
When we started the master plan process, we started looking at this initially in 2017.
And that had a wide swath of input from the community. You were part of that. I think, Rob, you were part of that. So I'm not saying we don't continue to listen to our voices, but I feel like we've done our due diligence engaging the public. These were priorities. I feel like the community to me says warm, safe, and dry, safe and secure. Yes, we behind that. We want to spend money on that. Now, learning spaces or the evolution of education, that's a more difficult question to ask. There's a lot of different opinions on that. I feel like my second question, do we have the ability to fund this? Is it in our budget? And can we do it without hamstringing us so that if anything unforeseen happens, we're not unable to react? I feel it's our physical duty now to do this so that we can get these projects started immediately. And then when we have the strategic plan that Tom is working on so hard, at that point, if we decide to address these other needs, so this is not precluding us from doing other things at J.B. Nelson, at H.C. Storm, at Louise White. What we're doing is make it safe and warm and dry and more secure with money that we have that we can spend, that we can do it, and we're living within our means. So I think the time to act is now, because we're not done listening to the community. I have a hunch we might have a referendum down the road, and it will address other needs. But these are primary core needs that I think the community has spoken on that we value, that we want to make sure that we are at a minimum providing for our students and families and teachers and staff. And so I feel personally that it's my obligation to vote for this so that we can move forward to satisfy those needs.
Any other comments?
I was just wondering, Tony, am I wrong that you had mentioned that the numbers here are good if we don't hire any new faculty? Am I just dreaming that you said that?
On the financial forecast?
Yeah.
Yeah, those numbers assume that we're not hiring we're not adding FTE to our current numbers, with one exception.
FT stands for?
Full-time equivalents. So thank you for pointing that out. Meaning, full-time, people who work for us full-time. The one exception is kindergarten. We did bake into that assumption that we would have to hire 6 kindergarten teachers to implement the full-day kindergarten requirement in 2027.
Did you make a comment that it did kind of put into place the thought process of the Best Buy contract?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so, from my perspective, and most everybody knows I kind of do this stuff for a living. I personally live in fear of something catastrophic happening. That is, we're in here next week talking about how we're trying to figure out how to free up $3 million to do a roof or shut down a school. That just happened at a school district recently, that they had to go borrow another school that was not being used from another school district to get kids in it. And we're the ones that are supposed to be able to try to help figure that out and provide guidelines to the staff and to the administration and to the teachers and to the kids and everybody else that we have to do that. I think like I want to look at these in my head as like you guys have framed it as a priority, and we were in RAC talking about some of this, and I wanted to know, because my primary question, and I'm glad everybody discussed it a bit, is, you know, we recognize the fact that if we go down this road, the likelihood of rebuilding those two schools and demoing them is sailed. So now we're taxed with, not literally, but we are taxed with how to figure out how to do that. So one of my questions on the safe entries one is, this construction, are you anticipating it's gonna go beyond a summer? Or, because it's twice the square footage that you're trying to get done in about the same amount of time.
Yeah, it would be highly doubtful that it would be done in the summer.
Right.
And it's mainly because of, really, there's no second shift labor force.
Right.
If you want to get this done, it's one shift. So you can kind of piece it together a couple different ways, but in early talks looking at this, we'd piece it together, get the safe entry done, get the office configuration done. That would shift around those two classrooms at those buildings, but you would leave out some of the kindergarten pieces because it all ties in with plumbing. Plumbing takes a little bit longer because you're connecting things, so that would get pushed down. And the reason that would work is kind of how the full day kindergarten is at. So that's how you would look at kind of putting that over 2 summers. You can't do this work during the school year.
Okay, right.
I think, Mark, there was also the discussion at HC Storm, the site improvements would be going through the start of the school year, correct?
Right.
Is that still?
If there was the whole site improvements being done, you could do that at a different piece. That could be a project on its own. The trade packages are completely different than what's inside the school, so you could do that separate. I mean, now, it probably wouldn't be the most convenient for students and staff there, but you could do that during the year. You would have to get a temporary entrance and you would have to move things around.
But from the timing standpoint, in the discussions we've all been part of, there's no way to do that simultaneously through the summer to be completed.
No.
So
I just wanted to make sure that was clear,
Yeah,
because
my
we've
point-
noted that site work here.
Yeah, my point is, there's gonna be some operational challenges
Yes, always.
at the buildings to do that.
I'll add to that I also work in the construction industry. I'm in schools quite a bit, and I have been in a lot of schools where work is ongoing, and it's not ideal, but
It's manageable.
kids are resilient. They figure it out. The workers are considerate. They get a schedule. In high school, when the ones I've been in, the bell's gonna ring in 5 minutes. Everyone gets off their ladders. They clear out. They go have a smoke or whatever they're doing. They let the kids
campus.
off campus. I'm sorry, whatever they're doing. But anyway, I'm saying is they're not really in the hallways. They know. They make it passable, and they work around it. And the kids, it's not ideal, but they adjust. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in those cases, there's something to be said about when people see the construction and something being built in the name of educating them. There's that, we can deal with this.
Yeah.
Well, we know we know the end game. And I think that's a difference from when kids know coming in during the winter, some of the univents might not be working. So they might have to be wearing their coats because the classroom might get a little cold, right? Extra cold. That's not towards the end game of anything other than they're hoping someone's gonna come and fix that, so it's working.
It's a nice sentiment, but it's not in the name of education, though.
Right, that's my point. And there's a different, I think, student efficacy in terms of getting through a construction site work when they know something's being built, right?
they know that the end goal is to facilitate or help them in some way, as opposed to we don't know if it's gonna get fixed tomorrow, sort of thing. So to kind of finish, like mandatory safety items, we'd be borderline negligent not to do, right? Borderline, it's not a legal terminology here, I'm just saying, we really gotta take a hard look at that. Warm and dry.
If we don't decide to do it, someone will make us do it.
It'd be highly likely. Warm and dry, I'm kind of in that same boat. I kind of really have not a hard time, because I know we need to do it, but it's a harder decision to make about the safe entries. Just because that's really where we're putting the stamp on it, that any work we're gonna do at those two buildings is gonna be more of this kind of operational impacts, future renovations, even if we do package that as a referendum question later.
That's the hard part of this decision for me.
That's
It's
the
sort of-
hard
we have
part of the
It's a
decision.
fork in the road for us, I
Yep.
feel like.
Yep.
In a way, in that regard, on that decision.
Yeah, and then the general maintenance, that has to occur to a certain extent, but I understand their lower priorities, and these are things that I know, as Tony said earlier, as fund balances adjust and firm up, that components are gonna slide up and down the scale of getting done or not done. So we could, that number 4 right there could turn into number 5 with 2 dashes in it if we have to, based on market economies and whatever else, so.
Number 2, too.
Right, so, I mean, it's a tough challenge. I said a while ago, when the referendum didn't pass, and particularly the second side, is, well, the easy route just evaporated. This is the hard route, and we're in the middle of it. And I wholeheartedly agree with you, RJ. I think we did the best we could, and the staff and everybody else did the best they could at educating people, but I don't think they know I don't think they fully comprehended, like, what the impact is gonna be financially, even about having to renovate as opposed to build new and everything else. Because like you said, it just couldn't, I had a long conversation with somebody at one of the meetings, and they just couldn't quite wrap their head around why these buildings weren't good enough to just renovate, so. I mean, from my end, I'll just let my vote kind of speak for itself, but I'm just acknowledging that this is just probably one of the harder decisions I've had to make
Right.
while being on the board.
And I don't want, I don't want to demean or, I have a different opinion perhaps than you, but, I mean, of course, my decision is formed off of, since I've been on the board, a lot of engagement, so, and we don't spend, like I said, $1 cavalierly. It's a hard decision to spend any dollars on any of this stuff. But, I feel at a certain point, part of our responsibility is to act, after getting input. I feel like we have gotten input at this point, so.
Yeah. I appreciate your opinion. I feel like yes or no, you're winning and you're losing.
Agreed, 100%. And your comments, for me at least, were well taken. I think it should be kind of like made aware of what some of these challenges are and things, so that if there's a referendum question coming up later, the job of that will be to put some money in line item number 5 to make the process a bit less complicated or arduous for our students and staff, so. Okay, any other questions or any other information to add? Okay. I will entertain a motion to award the 2024 Batavia High Schools, wait, did I go too far? I did, damn it. I will entertain a motion to adopt the Warm Safe Drive Facility Maintenance Plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by RJ, second by Rob.
I'm Aaron.
Daggone it. I'm off today. Aaron, thanks, Aaron. Cindy, will you please lead us in a roll call vote?
Sorry, guys, I'm having a hard time here. Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Arlondo,
Yes.
Mathis,
No.
Meadows,
Yes. Thank you very much. Motion passes. Good discussion. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. All right, Mark, let's get to the thing I tried to vote on earlier, so.
Try to move forward on that one.
Yeah.
This is really kind of the third month of this discussion, now to action. Last month, I talked about this was part of the bid process. This is mainly the exterior maintenance of the Fine Arts Center and the field house. The one piece that's interior is the lighting in the field house. So you will have trade packages for this. You'll see them in Appendix A, but The trade packages are masonry, painting, roofing, that's your exterior. Roofing's a small piece, it's mainly gutter and downspout work, and then the electrical is your interior work for lighting. So this is really maintaining those buildings. It's outside maintenance. Yeah, the price tag is high, but when you're that far up in the air, it quadruples the price very quickly for, lifts, protection of everything around the building from when you're
Want to see that
painting.
lift.
Also, the piece in here is there's allowances built into those bid prices of $55,000. Those allowances are really for unforeseen things that come up.
Is that overall, or is that individual
Sorry,
package?
that's overall. So it's 20 for masonry and 20 for painting, but it totals $55,000. So let's say nothing comes up, which normally doesn't happen, but if nothing comes up, that $55,000 would not be spent. So, I mean, the masonry is the highest one, but that's all the caulking, all the filling of the joints, or the crack in the precast walls. So that's that piece. I don't know if you have any other questions.
So LAMP reviews and meets with the contractors to do scoping, right?
Yep, LAMP, reviews all of these with the 4 trade packages.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody have any specific questions?
Just to clarify again, we have a plan in the budget to pay for this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, this is part of the capital projects plan.
And this is all summer work, right?
Yes, this will be this
Any
summer.
lead time issues on anything that we're
There is
getting?
not any lead time issues. Which is amazing that I can actually
I'm
say
with you
that.
on that right now. I heard him knock on the table, so it's jinxing ourselves is what he's thinking
Yeah,
right
just,
now. Protecting all.
I got my rabbit's foot in my pocket here
Yeah.
and rubbing it, so.
Yeah, okay. All right, anybody have any questions for him? Appreciate the diligent kind of process of bringing us along and kind of talking about each one. I think that's a bit of a shift from what has kind of happened in the past, and I appreciate the deeper knowledge about it, so.
And Mark, I do want to compliment you. I mean, you're a soft-spoken guy, but it's pretty rare for me to be at any event and you're there. I mean, first day of school, you're there, you're at event. I mean, you're present. Nobody knows our grounds better than you do in the district, so I appreciate all the work you and thought you put into this.
I appreciate you saying that.
I second
Second that.
Great call out.
It's not a formal action here.
Is that what we're voting on? Mark is a nice guy.
Mark, yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. I'll just make sure I'm reading the right one this time. I will entertain a motion to award the 2024 Batavia High School Summer Improvement Project bids as listed in Appendix A as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Aaron, second by RJ. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Meadows,
Yes?
Mathis,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Sliger,
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you. Next item is 2023 tax levy. Presumably Tony will lead us again.
Presumably. Brad did volunteer.
Willing?
Brad's got this.
So, we will start this off with what we call a public hearing, where members of the public, and I will present the details about the levy. Public will have an opportunity to ask questions, although I'm not sure anybody looks like wants to do that this evening.
Anybody? Bueller?
After we conclude the public hearing, then the board will have an opportunity to deliberate upon the levy and then take action upon it. What's not usual about this levy process for us this year and last year is that we have to hold this public hearing. We have to comply with the truth in taxation law, and the reason being is because our levy, our ask, exceeds 5% more than what we collected last year. So if the excess is more than 5%, then we have to publish notice in the paper, we have to hold a public hearing, and the board has to have an opportunity to formally listen to the public before they adopt the levy. And the reason why our levy is as high as it is because of inflation. When it comes to how the levy works, we're in Kane County. Kane County has what's called the property tax extension liability law, or limitation law, not liability law, limitation law, which is commonly referred to as the tax cap. And so we're limited to our extension by 5% or CPI, whichever is less. And we all know that inflation has been pretty high in the last couple of years, and so we're limited at that 5%. With new construction that is added onto our tax rolls, our ask is 5.9%. So on this public hearing, I'm just gonna give you some kind of high-level mechanics of what's happening when we're adopting a tax levy and where we've been in terms of history from tax rates and property taxes and where we're likely to be in the future. Because as we've been talking about with the referendum, tax rates are going down, we're paying off our bond and interest, and what impact does that have on my property taxes? So, Holly, if you would mind pulling up that slide deck, I'd appreciate it.
One question while you're doing that, since it's one of the questions on there. The $90 increase, is that post, like, is there a net, or like from the bonds falling off, is that $90 above that? Or is that
That in-
$90 without consideration of the
It's
bonds?
$90 all in, including the bonds. And so as Aaron asked earlier, the 9.1, when we were talking about the referendum, the reason why you remember that 9.1 is we talked about 9.1 is the regular bill that we have, and it has been for a long time. This is the first year where we actually see it decline just a little bit, went from 9.1 to 8.9. So it's actually the amount of, we're gonna pay for that bond and interest payment is gonna go down by 3.6%. Now, it only represents 9.6% of school taxes, but it's going down just slightly, so your taxes are still gonna go up this year. They're just not gonna go up as much as they would have with that $300,000 that we're not otherwise paying. But they're gonna go down next year. That payment is gonna be halved next year, and then the year after that, it's gone. We'll have paid off all those bonds, our ability to tax for them goes away, and then tax rates go down. And I'll show you a graphic of that in just a little bit.
Thanks.
But I do want this to be informational, so if you do have questions, please do ask. The total ask in this levy for this current fiscal year is $82.6 million. What we expect to actually receive is just about $82.3 million. We never quite know how things are going to shake out because the tax process is rather complicated, and assessments shift and shake until tax bills go out. And even after tax bills go out, things kind of shift and shake. But we ask for a little bit more than we would otherwise expect because there's a lot of things that we just don't know at this point in the process. And because,
Long and short of it is, some things fall shorter than expected.
Right.
You need a little bit of the overage to offset the things that might drive you under.
Right.
Otherwise, you could end up short of your 5%.
and the reason why that's important is because since we're capped, we're limited to that 5% or the CPI of what we actually extended in the prior year. So if you don't extend enough, you're kind of capping yourself, and that cap has a compounding effect over time. And so, that's, there's, of course, people disagree with that, when you're on tax, but when you're from a standpoint of the school board, where your only lever, almost quite literally, that you can use to raise revenues to pay all the bills that you have to pay is this one source, you have to be very careful on how you make these decisions. Bottom line is, the median value home in Batavia, as of right now, is $399,000. And if your property is worth $399,000 today, and it went up by about 7% in the last year, the difference between last year's tax bill and this year's tax bill is about $90. If your house is worth more, let's say it's $100,000 more, you'd add another $22.50 to that amount. If it was $100,000 less, you'd subtract about $22.50 from that amount. But that's what we expect. It's difficult to estimate what's happening in town because there are so many overlapping taxing districts in Batavia that it's hard to, we just talk about the school taxes because there's a lot going on. As the board knows, 10% of our enrollment comes from Aurora. It's a different municipality, different taxes. You could live in the Fox Valley Park District down there. Or if you're here in downtown, you're in the heart of Batavia, but if you live up in the northwest corner, you live actually in the Geneva Park District and the Geneva Library District. Those are different tax rates, and so it gets very confusing for everybody as to how all these things overlap and what ends up happening on tax bills, and it can be different from one side of the town to the next. Next slide, please, Holly. This is our revenues by source.
So did you say earlier that the evidence-based funding is gonna be zippy?
Well, it's not quite zippy, it's $5,000.
Oh, okay,
That's it.
fair, noted.
It's not even worth talking about, frankly, in $100 million budget.
Statistically zippy.
Statistically zippy. What's not statistically zippy is tax bills
Is
and
that
this,
actually in the document, statistically zippy?
yeah. And 81% of our revenues come from local property taxes. And for the foreseeable future, all of our new growth in terms of revenue to pay our bills and pay the very things that we talked about this evening. I apologize, there's other local revenue there, that's a little red sliver. And the number, I had reconfigured this slide so that you'd see it, but it's 3%. And then I reconfigured it again and that number disappeared, but that little red bar is 3%. State funding, the evidence-based funding that, what the state provides us, which will not increase as long as our enrollment's going down, and we exceed 100% in terms of adequacy, is 5.6%. And obviously, as time passes and our revenues increase elsewhere, that number is gonna decline. Other state funding are categoricals for special education and transportation. Those are reimbursements for money that we spent in the prior year. Those will go up slightly because every year we spend a little bit more on those costs. But the state never really keeps up with inflation on that, so that will erode over time. And then 6.6% of our money right now is federal, and that amount is gonna go down pretty significantly next year because all of the pandemic relief dollars will have been spent, and so that number will decrease. But that's where our money comes from. But the purpose of this slide is to say, what you're doing tonight when you adopt the levy, 81%, you're basically giving your authority to say, these taxes are coming in for this amount of money. If we don't file the levy with the county clerk by the 4th Tuesday in December, you don't get anything. And that would be a real problem, obviously. 81% of our revenue would disappear. Next slide, please, Holly.
Tom is down at the 7-Eleven.
You'll see this in the board report, but this is a visual representation of, in the green bar, market value of the home. So this year, market value, median value of a home, $399,000 for our school district. Last year, that home would have been worth $379,000, and the prior year, $360,000 and on down the line. But you can see what the taxes were for those amounts in prior years. And again, going up from $90 from 1 year.
And I'll note that a strong school system is a primary driver to home prices increasing.
Which is a really good point, as a matter of fact, and it very much is. And we're very fortunate in the sense from our EAV, when you look at our EAV and you look at the Great Recession, when everybody's EAV was declining, ours was one of the very first to recover and recuperate. I was just talking to some business managers in the northern part of the state where they have literally just recovered from the Great Recession in terms of their EAV exceeding what it was when the Great Recession started. And we recovered within a few years, and we're very fortunate that that's the case. But again, a large part that's due to the school district and the local market economy and those sorts of factors, but, I think the school district plays a pretty heavy role in that association.
Is there a simple explanation for, and that gap between the red and the inversion that happens on it? Is that the bonds falling off that's doing that, or what is that?
I'm not sure I understand.
So the red line of 6,000, but of taxes, but a house is worth 346, and then by the time it gets to 2023, your house value is shown above the red line.
Mhm. Yeah, that's just the scale on both sides, and so
Okay.
one is the dollar amount, and then the other is the scale for the taxes.
Okay.
And we're assuming that the property, the value of the home is increasing or decreasing with the rate of
Okay, I get
EAV
it.
increase.
So it's because it's just to make sure I'm correct in my assumption, so house values are going up 7%, but the taxes are only going up 5%, so at some point they go boink and flip the
Exactly.
other way.
Exactly.
Okay. So you're getting more value out of your 7% rise than you're spending in your 5%.
I think there are some people that might debate that with you,
But I understand.
Yeah, yeah. Next slide, please. Now, this is to the question that we had earlier about what's happening with the bond and interest levy and what's the annual tax levy, this graph illustrates that. So the action that we'll take tonight is the annual tax levy. That's the part of the taxes that the school board has control over, up to 5% or CPI, whichever is less. And the blue bars are the amount of money that the school district must raise to pay off the bond and interest debt that was issued. And so as we're nearing the end of paying that off, they're generally about 20-year issuances. We'll have that, we have one more year, 2023 is where we stand now. We've got one more year where the blue bar just gets a little slightly less than the year prior, and then next year, it cuts itself in half, and in 2025, it goes away. So that's about 10% of the tax bill that will disappear in the next couple of years. Next year, even with inflation being relatively high, tax bills, I expect, will go down next year. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But from us, yes. We can't control what the other taxing bodies do. There's 9,000 taxing bodies in Illinois, more than any other state in the union. And so it's difficult to tell what's happening on anybody's tax bill. And school districts, however, though, we're the big pigs at the trough, as I always say. I mean, we're 65% plus of the tax bill. So more than likely, tax bills will go down, but we can only talk about what will happen from our perspective, because it's very difficult to talk about what it means for every last Batavian with how everything overlaps. Next slide, please. This is a longer view of the property taxes paid for a median value home. We saw in that last graph where, you talked about those green bars increasing at various percentages, Craig. This is what it would look like if we did a look back to 2013. You can see how in 2014, that amount went down in terms of property taxes, and that was because EAV went down. Now, people had different experiences depending on what the value of your house was at the time, but the reason why we had such an issue with tax bills and the school board and its tax rate pledge at the time is because EAV was declining. And when we issued those bonds and made that pledge, it was inconceivable that EAV would ever go down. But of course it did. Here we are. We see that it's going to go down in 25, start going up again in 26, and continue on its trend in 28. Next slide. So just a couple take-home points. 81% of our revenue is from property taxes. The tax rate is declining every year, but taxes, of course, go up, even though the tax rate is declining. All of our debt will be paid off in 25. We're going to see an increase here in 23, but a decrease from a school district perspective in 24 and 25. All right, so that would conclude the presentation for the public hearing. And we have an opportunity now to hear from the public if anybody's so inclined.
Todd, you get a chance to speak. Come on.
One more time.
Take advantage of it.
3 minutes, though.
I just want to say to Tony that I find this very confusing when you get people's tax bills. I mean, I don't think it's by accident, but it is really our opportunity to fund our schools, so it's one of the primary duties that we have. But I thank you for giving context and then to be able to get it down to, I always give Tony a hard time because he likes to give all the context. I'll say it's 90%, he'll say it's actually 90.1. He always has to, and I'm like, you're right, but, I'm sure it's painful you to have to distill it down to something this succinct, but I appreciate you doing it because it enables people like me to be able to understand it and share it with others if they ask questions about it.
Do you have any more graphs?
Unfortunately, no.
Numbers?
I'm wondering, the adoption of the warm, safe, and dry facilities plan, was approval of this part of the funding?
Yes. That's a good question that I forgot to mention. So when we adopted the budget in September, we assumed that we were going to levy at the percentage that we're levying today. And 50% of that money shows up in this current fiscal year. So the levy that you'll adopt tonight, 50% of that money will show up in May and will balance our books as we end the fiscal year. And the other 50% of this tax levy would start paying salaries and bills for the beginning of the next school year. So if you change your mind on this levy, you change your mind on the budget that we adopted in September. So essentially, that budget adoption sets the course for the whole school year, and this is a component of that. It's dependent on the budget. So if you made a different decision as to what you were doing with the levy, you have to reconsider your budget.
It'd basically be invalid, we'd have to start all over again, wouldn't we?
Depends on
You
how
don't
bad
necessarily have to start at ground zero, but you have to consider, the difference between what you were expecting to collect and what you actually would collect. But more specifically to your question, RJ, yes, warm, safe, dry is highly contingent upon the levy, which is also increasing capital projects allocations by 15% each year. We're sliding past about $3 million worth of contributions this year. And by the end of 2025, that number will be in the high 5 millions to fully fund warm, safe, dry. All right. So seeing none in terms of public participation, Mr. President, we can move on to the actual contemplation of the adoption of the.
Yes, so does anybody have any further questions? My only note that I was gonna say before I call for a motion is, the thing that I hear from people all the time is, well, why are you asking more than the 5% that's allowable? So you explained that earlier, is because the maths, as my wife and I joke at the house, are sometimes push it below that, and then that would cap you at that for this year, which means that 3%, 3.5%, or whatever you can't get is gone forever, as it were. Again, debatable, but that's money that is no longer accumulating and compounding as you get more money from it, but, from that growth later, it's lost. So, that's the primary question I kind of hear from people about that. I don't have any other comments. I agree that it seems a little backwards that you're doing a levy decision and a budget before it, but it's unfortunately, like you say many times about many other things in our budgetary and financial process in districts and
It's how we
taxing
roll.
money.
Yeah.
It's the way we roll.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Tony before I call for a motion? Okay. I will entertain a motion to adopt the 2023 tax levy as presented.
So moved. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Danielle.
I heard Danielle.
Danielle got it. Okay. Going once, twice.
All right,
Second.
second by Aaron. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Mathis,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Steiger,
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes. Tom, now that we're done with all the fun stuff, Tom, is there anything you and the administration would like to comment on this evening?
Yeah, just a few things to share this evening. So it has been a year since I sat in front of the board this evening, as Todd had alluded to earlier tonight, and I've said this a few times, and I just wanted to say it again. I just want to thank all the various stakeholder groups, both inside of BPS 101 and also within our communities that we serve, for such a tremendous welcoming and willingness to partner, willingness to sit at the table and talk and partner together on different things. So Rob and Danielle and Raquel, you were not, in the process that I was going through, but I just kind of want to highlight that my hope is as we continue to work together with the administration, the board, our BEA and BESPA colleagues as well, that some of the things I talked about in that process are what we're going to continue to be really relentless about in pursuing. And several of those commitments we're talking about creating a sense of belonging in this district, that our students, our staff, and that people have an ability to feel like BPS 101 is a place for them. I think it's a great school district, great communities that are a part of our school district, but I think with any great organization, we also know then we should always keep working towards greater and better, and I think there's room for that. And so far with our strategic plan survey that we launched we're getting that feedback. You know, I think there's a lot of positive things. There's also a lot of things that people are sharing that are areas for us to consider in terms of our growth. The other thing we had talked about was, you know, making sure that we're elevating students. And the focal point about all of the work we do here is about our students. And, you know, hopefully that is another aspect that we're going to continue to engage in as we keep moving forward. That's part of why we did decide as a team here to move forward a little bit more on an aggressive timeline with that strategic plan process, right? And I just wanted to share with the board that, you know, so up to this date, we have over 1,000 responses. We're hoping for more. I want to thank Todd and Marcia for encouraging their members and reminding them to also complete the surveys. We've had a lot of parent feedback as well. And so with that, yesterday we completed our student Bulldog Ambassador training. These, just to remind everybody, as I shared earlier this semester, our students will be facilitating and leading the conversations and leading this process for the district. Last night's training was just a tremendous opportunity and reminder as to why we should entrust these kinds of things to our students. If you were there last night, you would have saw fourth graders through seniors working together in an environment where not only were they collaborating, but you could see some of our older students leading some of our younger students, creating a mentoring opportunity, while they were also all focused on how they're going to lead on January 8th in the afternoon when we meet for our Institute Day. Super exciting. The steering committee for this process, we will be meeting tomorrow evening for our first steering committee meeting. Aaron Kilberg and Rob Arlandu, you both are board reps, but we'll have key stakeholder reps as well as part of the steering committee. And the first meeting will be to review on our agenda will be to review the process, talk about where our survey status is before we close it, and, you know, go over any Q&A kind of things that the steering committee may have. Just as a reminder, the steering committee will be the accountability portion to this entire process, so that when we are done, those that are on that steering committee can vouch for the fact that they got to see the raw data, they saw how we synthesized everything throughout the process and at each step that we took. So when we come back to the board for final approval near the end of the school year, you will know that the steering committee was able to see everything along the way. And during those checkpoint meetings, giving feedback to me, confirming or affirming things look like they're matching all the feedback we've been getting, and that the goals, vision, strategic ideas all align to what the feedback was throughout the process. So very excited about that. I also want to make sure we congratulate two people who have been one of our stakeholder partners for the district for a long time. Recent announcement was the announcement of the Citizens of the Year for Batavia in Marge and Dave Brown. So I just want to give them a little shout out for all the work they've done. Marge especially being one of the very first people who welcomed me in with some of the work and the community engagement here. So I wanted to say thanks to that. And then before saying happy holidays and a great winter break to everyone, I do want to thank Todd and Marcia for trusting the process right off the bat with the strategic plan and being really supportive. To the administration team that supports the work, they help clear the path. And then Cindy, I really appreciate all your support. Nothing can be done without Cindy, so I really appreciate that. And again, the best part of this is our students. So, you know, thank our students for everything and what's to come. So with that, I hope everyone has a great winter break. See you next year.
Board member or colleagues, is there anything anyone would like to add? Or as if the answer was no, but go ahead.
Are you starting down?
Yeah, if you'd like.
Sure. Just to support, please definitely fill out those surveys. You know, the main ability for us to really hear everyone's voices and to understand everything thoroughly is through those surveys. There's been a lot of work put behind it, and the work going forward is going to depend on it. So please, please, please share the word, make sure that they're getting filled out. For me, this was like a really heavy meeting, so I just want to say to the public and to you guys, I mean, in full transparency, these are like really hard decisions, and they're not taken lightly. And I know this is only some of the conversations and thought processes that come out You know, I definitely think about the people who are not in this room. You know, we listen to members of Best Bus speak and, you know, how everyone is affected, and it doesn't fall from here. We take everything seriously, I take everything seriously, and just really hard decisions this meeting. So thank you for walking us through everything. Thank you for the board for asking some questions and just kind of trying to make sense of what we can and do the best that we can with what we have. So I feel like you can't make everyone happy, but just do know that we listened, and I hope we can continue forward to making choices that will really make differences for the kids, and hopefully they're the right choices in the end. On a better note, I just want to go back full circle to the beginning of the meeting to Chris. Even though he's not here, he has been such a mentor, an accomplice with some amazing things, and a really great friend. His trickle-down effect is really, really amazing to get to witness. From Amber to running for school board to students and other members of the community. It doesn't just stop at the school district. This falls into tying our youth into our elderly generations, and really how to tie in our community to learn from each other, to accept each other, and to really bridge a lot of the gaps. And I've already watched some of that happen, and I know that trickle-down effect is just going to keep happening. So it's really, really cool to see him acknowledged. Also, we've heard about Amber being acknowledged, and that is a true trickle-down from that. Without that support and those safe spaces where you can hear each other speak and really just kind of be supportive and know you're not alone in this, it's huge. So I hope that everyone in the community can feel that and really understand that. I know that the equity work can be seen as kind of a debatable topic, you know, or just kind of like a hot topic button, but it really does touch everyone's lives. It's not just the marginalized community. This is for everybody, and it really does lift the entire community. So I'm just super proud of him and just wanted to tag that along. And with that, happy holidays to everyone. And see you next year. Yeah.
My turn? Thank you for your comments, Danielle. I want to start by saying, like I always do, thank you to everyone who came and gave voice to their concerns or critiques of what we're doing, or their thoughts on just general subjects, or reached out to us via email or on the street or when I'm at Limestone, stopped me and asked me questions. It's really essential to the work we do. As RJ mentioned, you know, we don't do anything without really feedback from the community, so it's essential to what we do. So I thank them for that. I want to congratulate my colleague and friend, Chris Lowe. You know, I think back to when my process started, he was one of my first mentors, one of the first people I sat down with. So yeah, his impact is wide-ranging. I also want to thank the board secretary, Cindy Rodriguez. Every time we have a meeting, she kills a couple trees for me. Every time I have a request, she says yes.
Laptop out of the way.
Yeah, what is this thing? Throw that away, give me a piece of paper. But she gets things done. She keeps us organized, she keeps us informed, she makes sure that we can have the information available to us that we need to make decisions. So I want to thank Cindy for our hard work. And then I just want to thank our partners for all their work. I want to thank the team here that puts these reports together. It's a lot of work to generate them and make them understandable, and then to be able to answer questions, so thank you for that. On a heavier note, I want to send my condolences to the family and friends of Geneva freshman, I'm not sure why I'm getting so emotional, James Oliver. I don't know the family. You know, he wasn't a student of BPS 101, but I feel in the Fox Valley and the Duquesne, we are all a family. And I have a freshman son, so when you hear something like that, it's hard. So, you know, I just want to let them know that we're supporting them. I want to congratulate our Illinois State Scholars. Dr. Smith announced 76 of them. My daughter Emma Kilberg was one of them. We're very proud of all of them for their academic excellence. It speaks to how hard they work, and also how hard our teachers and mentors work with them. So we should all be very proud of them. I also want to share a couple things that I saw firsthand. Last night I was at the fifth grade band and orchestra concert at the BFAC, led by our instructors Lisa Hatfield, Mr. and Mrs. Osvath, and Mr. Buckley. If you want to be in an environment of exuberant joy, that was the place to be. I'm not sure how Mrs. Hatfield was able to contain all of that. It was an hour-long concert, getting them on and off the stage several times, listening to their performances, but they are open to the public, so if you ever have a chance to attend one of those. And what is remarkable is, most of that performance is enjoying their enthusiasm, but then as you see them progress and you see like where Craig's kids were, the improvement is just unimaginable, actually, even if you just go from year to year. So it's exciting to be a part of, and again, I would encourage people to take advantage of those opportunities. And then another thing I was able to witness was, I just like to point things out. We have a tendency, I feel like, as a board and as a community, as a district, to recognize, there's certain people or groups of students that get a lot of praise, athletes. I'm not denigrating them, but, if you walk into the gym, there's life-size posters of the seniors in there, which is great. We should congratulate them, but I always feel like we should really be doing more to recognize those people who are good citizens, who are kind. And so my neighbor, Riley Cheeseman, he got called to the principal's office. When I was a kid, that was a bad thing, but in this case, it was a good thing. He got to sit down and he got to make a phone call with the principal and call his parents and say he was recognized as the student of the month. And how you attain that is through academic excellence, participation in class, and in your activities. But really, one of the biggest drivers is leadership and being a positive influence for your fellow students. And so I think it's wonderful that we do that. These kids should really be held forth as this is what we're trying to do, because my mentor from an earliest stage was Virgil Murray. He was a principal for over 30 years in the town I grew up in. I would say, Mr. Murray, what are we trying to do? And he said, we're trying to produce good people, good citizens, good neighbors who are productive. That's our mission, in my opinion. And Riley Cheeseman's an example of that. So congratulations to him. And then at the end, I just want to again say, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, be safe, recharge, and we'll get back to work in 2024. Thank you.
Rob?
I'm going to keep it very short here, so I just wish everyone happy holidays, happy new year. Look forward to a very productive, collaborative 2024.
James Oliver's family condolences, really, that's such a tragic thing, and I'm thinking about them and the school and all the students. Really tough way to end the year, of course, but I mean, obviously, it's never a good time for such a strategy. I'm sorry, I'm losing my words, because it's really, really rough. So I hope the family is doing their best they can to take comfort in each other. Congratulations again to Chris. Really miss having him on the board. Always love to hear what he has to say, and he did not disappoint tonight. So, Chris, thank you very much and congratulations. Also to this team, the admin, everyone here, you all are really great. I know I pepper you with questions sometimes, and you always have thoughtful answers, so I appreciate it. And it does take me sometimes 2-3 times to say, what? Say it again, and you figure out the right way to say it to me, and I finally get it, so I appreciate it, really do. And with the board here, really appreciate tonight. It was a really good conversation. It was nice to end the year with some action and not just, well, it's winter break, let's just take it easy. So for pushing us towards that and for us having some good conversation, I really appreciate that, everyone. I'm really happy that there's 7 of us that do this, because I definitely don't feel like I always understand the right way to go with things, so I appreciate that. On a happy note, last week, my daughter had a strings performance at the Batavia Public Library, so that was very exciting. She is one of only 2 6th graders in the strings group that's composed of 7th and 8th graders, so that was really fun to see. And then just wishing all the students, faculty, and everyone a safe break.
All right, mine will be fairly brief, because I'm just going to point out that everybody else talked about music almost but me, so
I'm in a.
Join in.
I know,
I
I'm in a
mean,
weird
want to.
position now that I am, you know, my kids are out, and back visiting from college, and one's doing a music minor, so I get to kind of experience from afar like his grandparents did here, but, you know, you guys can take up the mantle, that's fine.
I'll start inviting you.
Yeah, that's okay.
Harass me.
But, you know, it's kind of a weird position to be in when my kids are not in school now, and you're on the board and you're trying to, like, focus on something that, you know, my kids aren't super invested in anymore, right? And so now it's like more kind of real to me in a lot of ways. So, my wife has managed the fact that we don't have concerts to go to, because I just finished up renovating our bathroom. So, one thing I forgot to mention, our student ambassadors were not here today. They are off studying for finals. So we wish them luck on that. I'm sure they do not need it. And then the last couple of things. One is we just came back about a couple weeks ago from III, which is a kind of a state conference for various levels of kind of Illinois school boards and others organizations. And some of the things that I had offhandedly mentioned to you as we're talking are showing up today. Like, if you guys had not noticed, we're not calling names in a very specific order anymore of alphabetical. It's getting randomized every time, just so that everybody doesn't feel like they got to be first or last or following a vote, so that the intent is to make people feel that they're making decisions for themselves, not reacting to what everybody else is saying. Right? So, and then seeing other changes that I've seen over the past year of this board being far more dialogue oriented than we ever have been in the past. So I definitely appreciate that. And then I do also appreciate everybody's willingness to kind of work with me as close my first portion of the year as a board president, and have people to help me, remind me when I jump an entire action item. So I appreciate that. And then all of the kind of discussions that are happening behind the scenes. I don't know whether it's because I see them now more than I did before, but they are definitely happening, and I think by and large they are good things, and everybody's learning stuff and getting to the right information. So with that, what I will end with is to our staff, administration, and teachers. My wife and I often debate about what do you call this respite, because a break never seems quite to have the gravitas that it needs to have. As she works in a school district, but a respite just seems weird too. So whatever you want to call it, enjoy it. You deserve it. We look forward to having you all back, but please enjoy your time with friends and family. Time is limited, time is short, and we want to make sure everybody gets the moment to be able to spend it with those that they love and care about. So thank you, everybody. Have a great holiday, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah, with a twofer today?
Yeah.
Second.
Rob, stepping in. All in favor?
Aye.
You gonna say no again, RJ? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is now 9:17, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.